welcome to Spectrum News at 2. I am Frank Zizadid coming to you live from the beautiful hills of Ibiakoran. Let's take a look at the headlines. President Buhari congratulates UK's Queen Elizabeth on Platinum Jubilee. Embattled Super Cup Abba Kyari to learn fate on August 29th.
Ukrainian
Plus,
President Zelensky
NATO Secretary General Jens Stoltenberg calls for preparedness for the long haul of the Ukraine war. We'll bring you details of these stories and more in a moment. Queen Elizabeth II on the occasion of the Platinum Jubilee. The head of the Commonwealth of Nations marked her 70th youngest ever on the throne and handling her role with grace, noting that the Queen is the first British monarch to reach 7 decades on the throne. He described the Queen as a loyal, patriotic, and compassionate leader who works for the people, not as a ruler, but as a friend and compatriot. Meanwhile, President Muhammadu Buhari has urged European countries to look to Africa for the solution to the resources supply challenges currently facing the global economy. He spoke at a political and business leaders forum jointly organized by the Spanish Chamber of Commerce, the Ministry of Trade, and the Confederation of Employers (CEOE) in Madrid, the Spanish capital. The president, who is in Spain on a 3-day state visit, told the forum that by reaching out to African countries, especially Nigeria, which is the largest economy on the continent, Europe would be solving both its current Nigeria, which had hitherto been focused by foreign economic partners for petroleum resources, is also rich in many other sectors like agriculture, healthcare, light, manufacturing, and host for others, and have a largest market. Away from that, the federal government has said the Minister of Power, Abubakar Aliyu, who said this in Abuja while inaugurating the new governing board of the Transmission Company of Nigeria, TCN, called on the members of the board to speak and act with one voice, is not at a level to support the economy and the population. 29 for judgment in a suit seeking to extradite the embattled suspended Deputy Commissioner of Police Abba documents for and against the suit by parties involved. Recall that Kyari, whose arguments were presented by Naruni Jimo, Senior Advocate of Nigeria, had asked for trial. He informed the court that more than a year before his arrest, he had written the Attorney General of the Federation and the Inspector General of Police, notifying them that he had opened a channel of communication with a suspected internet fraudster, to the suspected fraudster, and lure him to come to Nigeria, where an ambush was already laid for a sting operation by his own strike force. He further told the court that he wired fraud charge brought against him by to extradite him. Singer Osinachi at the Kuje Correctional Facility pending the hearing and determination of the homicide-related suit instituted against him by the Attorney General of the Federation. Justice Enke Nwosu Iheme gave the order after he pleaded not guilty to 23 counts bordering on domestic was adjourned to June 16th and June 17th. Recall that Nwachukwu's wife died on April 8 and many of her colleagues had accused her husband of subjecting the deceased to domestic violence of the Administration of Criminal Justice Act 2015, Section 221 of the Penal Code, and the Violence Against Persons Prohibition Act, has expressed optimism about its ongoing meeting with the Professor Nimi Briggs Committee, describing the negotiation as being progressive. Speaking in an interview with newsmen, ASU National President Professor Emmanuel Osodeke said the union had been negotiating with the Briggs Committee since last week over its demands. Recall that ASU commenced its ongoing strike on February 14, 2022, after the federal government failed to meet some of its demands, including the release of revitalization funds for universities and employment of the University Transparency and Accountability Solution. Meanwhile, the Federal Minister of Education, in a statement by the Minister of Education, Adamu says it has received the reports of the 21 white paper drafting panels which were constituted in March 2022 for tertiary institutions across the country. Away from that, the Economic and Financial Crimes Commission, EFCC, has released the suspended Accountant General of the Federation, Ahmed Idris, who was arrested for alleged involvement in 174 billion naira fraud. The EFCC Public Relations Officer Wilson Owojeren confirmed to newsmen that Idris was released on bail. His arrest, Idris was suspended by the Minister of Finance, Budget and National Planning, Zainab Ahmed, to enable him to stand trial. For the judiciary to enable that arm of government, this passionately upholds the rule of law. Governor to met the call in Makati during the swearing-in ceremony of 3 newly appointed High Court judges in the state was from the Federation account and remitted directly to the heads of courts for onward payment to judicial staff. So its responsibility, as democracy cannot thrive without adherence to the rule of law. Now to Africa, where east of the Democratic Republic of Congo, after a week of intense fighting between the Congolese army and in 8 days of fighting, more than 72,000 people fled their homes in the territory of Nyiragongo and the neighboring territory of Rutshuru. The refugees are now staring at an acute hunger due to overcrowding and lack of donor funds. Reports say many displaced people are still crowded into schoolyards in the area as they are afraid to go home. Still in Africa, Senegalese President Macky Sall is currently chairman of the African Union, will travel to Russia for talks with his Russian counterpart Vladimir Putin in Sochi, his office said. In a statement from the president's office, the visit is part of the efforts of the current chairmanship of the Union to contribute to lull in the war in Ukraine and the release of stocks of grain and fertilizer, whose blockage particularly affects African countries. The statement noted that the visit takes place at the invitation of Putin, adding that President Sall will be accompanied by the chairman of the African Union Commission, Chadian Musa Faki. Meanwhile, Chad has declared a food emergency in the country, signed by the chief of the military transition, Muhammad Idris Deby, called on all national and international partners to help the population, citing a constant deterioration of the food and nutritional situation and a growing risk of food scarcity if no assistance was given to the Sahelian nation. Meanwhile, the United Nations estimated last year that 5.5 million Chadians or more than a third of the population were in need of urgent humanitarian aid. The situation has only worsened following the war in Ukraine. On the foreign scene, prior nature of gun violence. In a primetime speech to the nation from the White House, President Biden, who said too many places in America had become killing fields, noted that if Congress could not outlaw such weapons, it should seek to raise the age to buy them from 18 to 21. The U.S. president also called for expanding federal background checks and nationwide. Still on the foreign.
How many more innocent American lives must be taken before we say enough? Here's what the overwhelming majority of American people believe we must do. Here in high-capacity magazines. And if we can't ban assault weapons, then we should raise the age to purchase them from 18 to 21. Strengthen background checks. Enact safe storage law and red flag laws. Repeal the immunity that protects gun manufacturers from liability. Address the mental health crisis, deepening the trauma of gun violence and as a consequence of that violence. These are rational, common sense measures. Here's what it all means. It all means this. We should reinstate the assault weapons ban on high-capacity magazines that we passed in 1994 with bipartisan support in Congress and the support of law enforcement. 9 categories of semi-automatic weapons were included in that ban, like AK-47s and AR-15s. And in the 10 years it was law, mass shootings went down. But after Republicans let the law expire in 2004, and those weapons were allowed to be sold again, mass shootings tripled. Those are the facts. A few years ago, the family of the inventor of the AR-15 said he would have been horrified to know that its design was being used to slaughter children and other innocent lives instead of being used as a military weapon on the battlefields, as it was designed. That's what it was designed for. Enough. Enough.
Still on the foreign scene, Russia's invasion of Ukraine, which began on 24th February, rages on into its 100th day. According to Ukraine's President Zelensky, Moscow's forces are now in control of 20% of Ukrainian territory, and Russia's army is trying to break Ukraine's defense in the eastern region from all directions. Fighting is raging in the key city of Severodonetsk, part of Moscow beat to capture the wider Donbas region. Meanwhile, this after meeting U.S. President Joe Biden at the White House, Stoltenberg said NATO must continue to support Ukraine in what was becoming a long and sustained conflict.
With the more weapons and with the more time it will need to do that?
And I think the only way to address the issue of what kind of the Ukrainian people to make those hard decisions on potential compromises. Our responsibility is to provide support to them to uphold the right for self-defense and the right which is enshrined in the UN Charter and to stand up against the aggressive invasion of...
To stay with us. Glad to have you back. On a business news, the Institute of Chartered Accountants of Nigeria, ICANN, has elected its 58th president, Tijani Issa. His investiture took place in Lagos and was witnessed by the governor of Lagos State and Jigawa State, the Minister of Education Adamu Adamu, sister professional bodies, the academic community, and other relevant stakeholders. In his acceptance speech, the new ICANN president promised to hold dear the position of trust and responsibility and defend the public interest. Still in business, the Central Bank of Nigeria has ordered banks and payment service providers to accept indemnity from customers from highly secured online funds. The banks are hereby required to accept indemnity from customers for highly secured online funds transfer above 1 million naira for individual and 10 million naira for corporate, subject to a maximum of 25 million naira for individual and 250 million naira for corporate. Implement electronic indemnity with stricter controls requiring biometric transfer. Medical Center Abuja, Dr. Arome Adejo, has decried the lack of equipment to treat In sports, after kicking African champions the Tigers out of the 2022 FIBA Women's Basketball World Cup, the Federation of the International Basketball Associations has reportedly threatened the federal government withdrew from international basketball competitions. Sports Minister Sunday Dare stated that the withdrawal, which took effect 3 weeks ago, was part of government's effort to restore the sport from the grassroots, as well as put an end to the lingering leadership crisis that had rocked the factionalized Nigerian Basketball Federation for close to a decade. A week after the withdrawal, FIBA, in a later address to factional Nigerian Basketball Federation President Musa Amadu Kida, signed by Jajib Lambu, head of legal FIBA, and dated May 18, 2022, warned Nigeria of possible sanctions. Recall that FIBA in the later stated that Nigeria was at the risk of further sanctions, saying the withdrawal was in breach of Article 9, subsection 7 of FIBA's General Statutes, which states that national member federations shall manage their affairs independently and with no influence from third parties, adding that on the initiative of the Secretary General, FIBA Central Board may suspend a national member federation for the breach of Article 9. Still in sports, the mere presence of the magnificent FIFA World Cup trophy has brought back so many fun memories and feelings of nostalgia to both soccer players and fans in South Africa. The FIFA World Cup trophy is on a global tour of 51 countries that includes the 32 nations that have qualified for the 2022 edition in Qatar later this year. One of those stops was in South Africa, where Brazil's 2002 World Cup winner Giuliano Belletti accompanied the coveted silverware as it touched down at Lanseria International Airport in Johannesburg on May 28. The two of the worldwide tour saw this in a memorable photo. Meanwhile, with 5 representatives from the continent heading to Qatar, there was a real sense of belief that one of them could bring the trophy to Africa. On entertainment, the Big Brother Niger Season 6 reunion started off with glitz and glamour on Thursday night. The opening night showcased the introduction of the reunion show and the former housemates as the former BB Niger Shine Your Eyes housemate came in with their A game to the reunion opening night, showing up in style. The host, Ebuka Obi Uchendu, noted that Niyi was absent for the opening show because he was healing from a medical.
Hello, Rose. How you doing?
I'm good.
Have you recovered from almost winning?
Still on entertainment, the U.S. mission in Nigeria and giants in the Nigerian music industry have thrown their weight behind the upcoming 15th edition of the Hades Awards. Speaking at a recent event, acting U.S. Consul General Brandon Hotspeed said that the cultural and artistic exchanges are just one way the United States partners with the people and government of Nigeria. While executive producer of the Hades Awards, Ayo Animashu, has said this is the first year the Hades will be held outside of Nigeria, describing Atlanta as home to many prominent hip-hop and R&B artists and their record labels. And that's all we have for you at this time. Do ensure to follow us on social media and subscribe to our YouTube channel, all of which you can find on our website, Spectrum TV.